Welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast, the show that invites you to take a seat around the community fire and listen to stories that inspire. I'm your host, Kathy Robinson, author, coach, and founder of Athena Wellness, a company that's dedicated to supporting you on your journey to live more wholeheartedly. Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. Have you ever had the experience where you're reading a book and you can just feel that author has had a deep personal understanding of the subject matter? That's how I felt when I read the book today's guest published earlier this year. I'm joined today by Sandy Stream, author of The Courage Circle: How to Live in Truth and Dare. Sandy taught law for 20 years before turning her efforts toward facilitating workshops that encourage participants to live in peace and power. Here's what we cover: the origins of the Courage Circle, why it's important to find and live from our essence, understanding personal power, the difference between force and power, and how courageous living can have an impact on the world. You can learn more about Sandy at thecouragecircle.com, and I'll put a link to her website in the show notes, where you'll find her book and events. And now on to the show. I hope you enjoy this courageous conversation. Sandy, welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Kathy, for having me. Very happy to see you again.
So you were a lawyer for 20 years, teaching contract law to purchasing professionals, and you do something completely different these days. So please share a bit about how you came to the work that you do today.
I think throughout my life, I was always seeking ways to feel better or improve my life because I had gone through many difficulties and many traumas. So that was ongoing while still enjoying life. But the past few years were actually more difficult than usual during COVID, with relationships, with many things. And so I spent a lot of time with myself and with, listening, reading, doing anything I can to figure out how to live, basically. And I took notes, and the notes were scattered on the floor. And I just, every time I would hear something or think about something or feel something, I would just add it to that section. So I kind of started having sections just to organize, my world. And then eventually I put those sections together. I didn't plan to do that, but I wrote a book called The Courage Circle. And now what I do is I facilitate real courage circles, meaning I get together with human beings of all kinds, shapes, sizes, races, ages, and whatever. And we discuss, some of the contents. It's not my content of the book. These are topics I think all human beings should look at. And so we discuss them with respect and honesty. And it's really interesting to do that.
I love how this came together so organically. You were just trying to make sense of your own life, and suddenly you realize that you have the makings for a book. And I'm just curious, have you always been a writer? Have you always taken notes? Or was this something that just came about because of the life situation you were in?
So many, many years ago, someone had told me, listen to your body, or, one sentence sometimes could change your whole life. You never know what seed is planted where and that you remember. And so I did have pretty intense traumas during, a separation in my early 30s. And so I did, start writing different books then. So yeah, I guess I didn't see myself as a writer. I saw myself as stories or ideas came to me that made sense, that ended up somehow on paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many of us start out that way, right?
Yeah,
And then suddenly
yeah.
you realize that it's more than that. But you did mention your book, and we should give the full title. It's called The Courage Circle: How to Live in Truth and Dare, which is just lovely, lovely title.
Oh, thanks.
When I read the book, I could feel that you walked the path, that there was a deep understanding of the subject matter that you were sharing with the reader. So where did the concept of Courage Circle originate? How did that come about?
So in my living room, I painted a circle on my wall, thinking, okay, I'm going to sit here and try to figure out how to feel better. And I had the word courage a lot in my head because I was reading one book who talked a lot about, courage being that kind of like the switch from going from other states to new states. So it was really kind of a pivotal thing to look at. So definitely that word was starting to rumble in my head as I was trying to figure out my world and my life. And that circle ended up like a bit of a metaphor, a courage circle that I'm creating around myself. So it wasn't a circle like I had a lot of people or support. I didn't. It was a circle that was internal, where I guess I started finding the courage to do what I think I have to do, even if it's difficult, to trust myself, even if no one had before or no one around me agreed, or, so those things take a lot of courage to do that kind of action in our society. And so that became just a way of life, like looking for what feels true to me and just mustering the courage every time to follow it. That's really how I try to live now.
I love the image of you painting a big circle on the wall. And so I'm just thinking about how did you start to work with some of the concepts that later became the book, and how did that transform your life?
So one important thing, there's so many. So the book is comprised, for me, it's like a puzzle. It's a bunch of pieces of a puzzle of how to live for me, right? Everyone might have a bit different pieces of a puzzle, and it's not one thing. It's not like, okay, meditate 10 minutes a day and you're going to be good. Like it doesn't work like that. It really is many pieces coming together. A very important piece for me was to understand the difference between, what's happening in our head and what's happening in our body. I use the word in the book called decorporated, like we've been cut off from our bodies. I don't think it exists as a word. I tried to Google it when I was writing, and I don't think it's used, but I think it's a perfect word to describe, what we encounter in terms of not respecting what's going on in the body. So what's in the body is things like your feelings, your gut, your heart. All these things are kind of ignored in our society, and we're very obsessed with what I call the calculator mind, just the thinking mind. That not that it's not useful for certain things, but that's not my engine. So the engine is in the body, and that was hard to start to trust. If you have emotions, we tend to be critical of them, or, oh, I shouldn't feel sad. I should feel grateful, or I shouldn't feel mad. They were just trying to do this, or we question our own feelings all the time instead of allowing them or listening to them. So that, I started doing slowly, and that led me. So that's a very important big step, I think, to stop demonizing our own emotions as human beings. I mean, they're there for a reason, and they might be even a good guide for you of what you need to do. Then, of course, learning to set boundaries, and trusting, what your body needs, what you need, which again is not an easy thing to do. I think most people are taught that taking care of your needs is selfish, or loving yourself is self-centered, or weird concepts, really. If I think about it now, it sounds really strange, but at the time it's just how that's kind of the information that's circulating, and so we think it's true. So to have to challenge a lot of those ideas that we've been taught is difficult if you don't have, and certainly didn't have much world around me during COVID to support that, other than a very nice meditation group that I was interacting with online. That was very useful. So it's many pieces. So those are just a few pieces, but they're not small things. Trust yourself. It's a nice little 2 words, but I mean, that's a huge,
The lifetime journey.
yeah,
Right?
it's something. Yeah. And to do it, to actually do it. And what does that mean? And what is myself anyways? What am I trusting? So to really start to feel yourself at a deep level and trust that, that quiet voice that tells you, yeah, this is not good for you, or this is, or that's not something we're often encouraged to do. So,
How do you begin that conversation? So somehow, and I'm guessing that your business background was part of this conditioning, right? So it's society, it's the way you're brought up, it's the relationships that you're in, it's the business that you're in, like all of this adds.
yeah.
And you had this space then where all of that was shut out, at least temporarily, and you were able to start to listen. But how did you, it feels like it was a bit foreign. And so you almost had to get to know yourself. So can you talk a little bit about those tentative first steps? Because I'm guessing that a number of our listeners may have heard those little whispers, but like, what do you do? Because like you say, it's a big puzzle, right? How do you start to navigate through that?
Yeah, I mean, first, a big part is to, again, to negate the information that's coming from outside. And the typical information, as far as I see, is that, there's some kind of point system in the world that exists. I don't know what that point system is, but it's some system where you get points for getting law degrees, but you don't get points if you do other things, or you get points for looking this way, not looking that way. It's some weird point system that exists, which doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, how many points do I get if I smile at my neighbor? Like, do I get a point? Or, the whole thing is a bit of a weird. So just to kind of not accept that whole idea about who you are or your value is a very big step, not, calculating yourself basically based on, okay, I got this degree, I get this many points. Oh no, I made a mistake. I just lost some points. Not seeing yourself based on title, mistakes, all those things. That's a big one. And to start, just feeling yourself deeply, like in your heart, saying, no, I'm just, I'm me, and there isn't, everything else is just extras, but that's not the essence, right? That's not the you. The you is always the same. You're 7 years old, you're kind of a certain you, and then you're 15, you're still the same, and you're 30 and you're still the same somehow. What's that same thing that stayed, right? Degrees changed, but there's something the same. So that's the part that's nice to try to access, this essence of yourself, or your spirit, your soul, your essence, whatever word, people use different words for it, but something that has nothing to do with what you might have achieved or not achieved. So when you start to trust that or feel that deeply, right, then those messages don't make sense. So if somebody's talking down to you or demeaning you or gaslighting you or weird things, all of a sudden that doesn't make sense anymore, or it's not okay because you're not agreeing with that game. And so for me, it started to feel like a bit of a like, hey, no, wait, I want to see what's going on here. I'm not just going to accept your messages. Let me see what I think or what I should do or what I feel. And then the funny story is at some point, in misery, I'm sitting there, I'm like, what should I do? Okay, if there is something in the world, like, just tell me what to do in this situation. What should I do? And then I'm like looking for some quiet voice that supposedly there's some quiet voice. And actually there was a quiet voice that just said, be quiet. And I'm like, oh, very funny. The universe wants me to shut up. But then after laughing, which I did, I laughed. I'm like, oh, how nice. Like whatever's others said, be quiet. But then after laughing, I'm like, maybe I should be a bit more quiet. And so I actually ended up meditating a lot. And I ended up listening to that little nudge or whatever that was from inside of what to do. So funny enough, it was time for me to be quiet a little bit. And so now I don't meditate as much, but when I'm really not sure what to do, that's really my go-to system. I'll literally sit down on the floor, not on a chair. It really makes a difference to sit on the floor. And I'll like close my eyes and I'll just say, should I do this or this? What do you think? I just spend time in there, and whatever feels right, I kind of go with it.
And that's a new practice that came to you. Did it come to you in meditation?
Well, I mean, in meditation, what it is for me is that you're just feeling yourself, right? You're not spending all your time, analyzing with analytical comparing brain stuff that we do, but you're just feeling yourself. So you might be feeling your emotions. You might feel sad. You might feel confused. You're just feeling feelings. So when you're feeling a lot, just in general, you feel yourself, and then, you process your feelings. The feelings will pass, whatever they were. And you've made choices. So now there's a bit more. So imagine you've processed, like you had 500 feelings and you've processed them, the old ones, and you're acting upon the new ones in a way to drive you in the right direction. So now it's not as chaotic anymore. There's a bit more clarity and what should I do next? Like, does this feel right? Does this feel right? And assuming you've kind of cut off the idea of having to get that answer from the outside, you're really looking for the answer from the inside. So maybe you'll ask people like, Kathy, what do you think about this? But that's not where the decision will come. And that's not the approval that I would need. It's just kind of listening to it. But at the end of the day, you really have taken responsibility to decide your own life for yourself, from yourself, I guess.
I like that phrase. You also mentioned a favorite word of mine, which is essence.
Yeah.
And I can recall a specific experience where I really experienced that for the first time.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you had a specific experience like that. And was there that aha moment that made you recognize, oh, this is me, and this is the same me that's been here?
Yeah. It didn't happen exactly in that way, but what really happened, which I think was that type of feeling, is, feelings, in such a terrible state, and just really feeling for myself. So people use the word self-compassion, but they just use a word, but really actually experiencing that as something else than just saying it. And really like saying, oh my gosh, like, poor you, but not in a pitiful way, but just like, geez, you've really been through stuff and whatever, just really feeling myself so deeply like that. That made me like really, I don't want to say fall in love with myself, but really care about myself so much, because I understood so much of the experience. So I think it really made it very clear that I'm just so deeply, innocent and good and going through things. And so I didn't see any negative about myself. And I don't see negative in others either at the deep level. I think essentially, people are just, trying to figure things out, but their deepness is actually goodness. Like that's my deep belief.
So was it a recognition of a oneness, first with yourself and then with others?
I don't know if I would call it oneness with myself. I mean, seeing yourself as you without, titles, or feeling yourself. I think for me, it's just feeling myself as a human being without all the other things. Maybe that's maybe the easiest way.
Is acceptance the right word?
Yeah, not exactly. I mean, acceptance is something you do all the time. If you accept life as it comes, doesn't mean you don't do anything about it, but definitely you're able to see reality instead of avoid reality. That's what the word acceptance means for me. But I would say for me, it was just feeling my heart space. Probably in some meditations, I felt it a lot as well. And then feeling that that's who I am, like it's my heart, or, an energy in the heart or something else, and not what I thought I was, which is a lawyer or a daughter or whatever else, or who knows, whatever titles we put on each other, which we think is us, I guess. And so that's what for me is the essence, just the feeling in the heart that you can access about yourself.
And what's your current practice today? Like, how do you get in touch with that daily? Is it throughout the day? Like, how do you keep that relationship vital?
Well, I think now I didn't have that before, but now I feel like I just live it all the time. Like I'm just me all the time. So I don't have that confusion.
That's quite a transformation.
Yeah. Or maybe it's a non-transformation. Maybe it's, you know, what we are in the first place.
I like that. Yeah, it's nice. The folks that do come to your courage circles, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the community element and how you're engaged with others in doing this work. But from what I can see, there does seem to be a lot of aha moments. Just looking at some of the results and some of the testimonials on your website and the experiences that people have had. So can you speak to maybe one or two of those and how this work has affected others?
I think what's the most important is just setting up the tone of the place, right? It's not, everything else comes from that base. So the base is that we are all sitting around in a circle. I don't say the words, but I do. It would be too long to describe here, but we basically greet each other as human beings. So again, not from our titles. I actually ask everyone to drop them all after they introduce themselves. And I say, okay, now we're going to drop all that, including me. And I have, by society standards, one of the highest, I'm a law degree from a pretty prestigious law school. So I'm dropping that one too. So everyone can drop their things. And I invite everyone even to drop your kids, like drop everybody, drop everything just for the hour. So that sets a nice stage for just being in the room without, the other stuff. We do a quick listening practice just to show everyone the types of listening, because I think mostly in our world, what we think is listening is not listening. It's actually criticism or other words I would put there, but it's not listening. And then, so anyways, once we've done that, now we talk about a new topic. Every week is a new topic. So 2 days ago, we actually did, what is victim mentality? What is it? Like, that's the discussion. And so I usually start, or I facilitate something at the beginning just to get us going. But then, each person shares amazing things about what they've experienced on this topic. So it's not me preaching or anything like that. It's the fact that the room is open and people are open and honest is why there is wisdom in the room coming from everybody, not just from me, because there's just this ability to be honest, which we don't normally encounter in our day-to-day lives. That way I could just speak honestly and people don't jump on me giving me advice and people don't tell me what to do and people don't criticize. I could just say it. So that's what happens in the room. And so every time we meet, I find that it's pretty powerful. I know one woman came up to me once. She said that it was the first time in her life, she was over 50, and the first time in her life that she had told her parents that she can't come for dinner because she had something else. So basically setting her first boundary, and it's terrifying. So that takes actually huge courage to do that. And she did it. And despite, trembling actually and being terrified of the repercussions of what would happen, and she did it. And so for me, that was a huge act of courage and a stepping stone towards who knows what. And, and other people, all different things happen. And another person told me the other day, this one was very moving for me, when I talk about, trying to notice how you play a part in something, part of the victim mentality. How am I playing a part in this thing? Even my 2%, how did I take part in this thing? Did I, allow someone to treat me this way? It's not a blaming thing. It's just recognizing our role, right? Which is a powerful thing to do, because if you recognize your peace, then you can always recognize your peace everywhere. And this is where I think our power rests, right? In just this recognition without criticizing or blaming, just really seeing the truth, right? To live in the truth. The truth is, I was kind of participating in this relationship, right? By doing this and that. That's the truth. So being able to see truth without criticizing yourself. So in that circle, one guy was saying, I just realized that I have been really hurting myself for many years, like really not treating myself well, but really realizing it, not saying it. So for me, that was a very powerful thing to actually realize that you're not treating yourself well. So I thought that one was quite moving for me to hear in that moment.
You've used the word power, and your work does center on this concept of personal power. So from your perspective, what is power?
So I put a quote in the book. I put very few quotes from other books in the book, The Courage Circle, but one of them I took from Power versus Force. It's a book that I had read at the time that, there was some pieces of it that I found were fascinating, by David Hawkins. And he wrote something like, power wins over force because force moves against something, but power doesn't move against anything. And force has to constantly be fed energy. So imagine something that you have to give it energy in order to push, versus like the sun, right? Which has just power inside. It is total and complete in itself, and it doesn't require anything outside itself. So, using that imagery of power, I think for me, power is something that we can access, that we actually have already internally. It's not the kind of politics stuff that we see. And some people might think it's, when you start to feel it, like we do have a lot of power inside of us. When you start to feel it, then other people around you feel it as well. But it's not the forceful kind. It's more like, the power of being able to make a choice, for example. That's a huge power that we walk around with, that we're able to make choices. It sounds like a little word, but it's a huge word to realize that we're choosing all the time. Instead of saying, I have to go to the meeting, to realize, no, I'm choosing to go to that meeting. I don't actually have to go to the meeting. And in my circle, when we talked about this, someone said, yeah, but I mean, you have to take care of your kids. You go to jail. Or I'm like, well, no, I'm choosing to take care of my kids. Actually, I don't have to take care of them. I can go to jail. That's still a choice. It might not be a fun choice or easy choice, but it actually is a choice of something. So to realize that we're making choices all the time is a very, that's one of the powers that we all have as human beings, that we just have. It's not something we need to get or acquire, right? There's a lot of other ones, right? To be able to be kind to yourself or to someone else. That's a very powerful thing that we possess, actually, as human beings. So I didn't realize I was writing a book about power, actually. I thought I was writing a book about, figuring out your emotions and how to feel better, how to set boundaries. But then as I went into the later chapters, I realized actually the book is about power and how to live feeling in your power all the time, feeling clear, acting from your center. These are all things that come from our inner power that everybody has already. They don't need to get it.
And then conversely, how do we give it away? How do we give away power?
Oh, yeah, that's good. So for example, let's say I say, Kathy, you and your aunt, you're going to be the two people who get to decide if I'm a good person or not. I just gave my power away, right? Like you guys are the one that are now deciding who I am or my worth or, what I should do. Anytime we put outside ourselves something that really belongs to us to give ourselves, that for me is giving your power away. Someone else to decide if something is right or wrong for you, accept you or reject you. I would even go as far as giving somebody else the right or the permission, or asking someone permission of whether you belong somewhere or not. For me, that's a big one. You don't need permission to belong in our world. We already belong. That's for me a big one. So people are seeking and asking someone, can I belong in your group? Can I belong in your group? Instead of, I'm already here. I belong here. I'm in this world. Like I don't need someone to agree with that. Right. So that's the difference between those are examples. I don't know if they make sense to you.
I'm trying to work on on less about the force and the doing and more about the allowing and the receiving. So that's been my lesson these last
Yes.
several years, and how to work with that. I can make things happen, but how do I take more of Sandy's stance now and be courageous enough to stand within that empty circle?
Yeah. And be. Yeah.
And be.
Yeah. And for me, that's an interesting one. At some point, it was almost like I felt like almost like a kid. Like, I'm like, no, I don't have to do anything for, to be valuable on this world. I don't have to do that. That's also part of giving your power away. Like, yeah, if you do this, then you're good. If you don't do that, you're not, you're this, you're that. I was like, no. And so it was literally a feeling of, and I wrote that in the book, like, if you really want to feel your worth, just sit on the floor and do nothing. That's where it is. Like, just sit on the floor, do nothing. That is like a kid, like, no, I'm good and that's it. I don't need to do anything. But it doesn't mean you won't do anything. It's just you don't have to do it for that, to get those points. You already have that. And now what do I want to do from that, instead of trying to get something that's already there? It's like, then from there, you might actually do a lot. I'm a big doer. Like I'm constantly doing. I spend time being as well, but it's like almost a doing being now because it's coming from, who I am deeply and not trying to figure out. That's from a different place, I guess.
Knowing what you know now and all of this beautiful wisdom, what would you tell the 20-year-old you?
There's two things that I wish I knew at 20 or that I could pass on to any 20s people. One, I would say, like really kind of redefining what it is to be kind to yourself. I don't think we're taught that like at all. At least I wasn't. What does it mean to be kind to yourself? We're really taught like do things for other people. That's what we think kindness is when we're young. Like, oh, you're kind if you help this one and help that one. But nobody tells you you're kind if you help yourself or you're kind to yourself. Like that's kind, actually. But I don't think I had known that at all. I'm sure I didn't know that at all at 20. That's kindness, actually. That's not selfish. That's pure kindness and a responsibility. And the other thing I would tell myself is to just trust myself more. So I don't think I was getting those messages either from the world around me or that Lord, yeah, trust yourself. Oh, yeah, you feel that? Go ahead. Not that they were negated. I wasn't challenged more than other people. I didn't have any, necessarily different. But even in general, anytime somebody says something, I feel like I should see an osteo or because I have this, and we'll say, oh, no, you should see this. Or, like everyone's quick to tell you what they think, but not say, oh, really? Okay, you feel that's best? Or at least give it, space to exist and inquire about it so people can build self-confidence and not always look to outside world for answers. We have a lot of inner wisdom.
Do you find that the more you rely on that inner wisdom, the more your external world changes, that you're not coming up against that type of unsolicited advice the way maybe you were in the past? Like, do you see that? Do you see it reflected in your outer world?
Oh, for sure. So in terms of that example, I mean, anyone around me and my kids have trained me actually not to do that at all. So like my kids are very comfortable to say, Mom, I didn't ask you. I didn't ask your advice. They'll say it straight. And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. So, and in my world around, I'm comfortable enough to say something like that as well. If I'm close enough with a person, but my most intimate relationships, we don't really do that anymore. There's more listening and then, giving ideas, but it's done with respect. It's not like I know better than you and this is what you should do. Sometimes it's ideas which still leave space for that respect. So yeah, the world changes around you absolutely when you start to be yourself, come into yourself and put all these boundaries. But it also does what it wants, right? We can't control our world, and I still walk around in the world with the same stuff happening. People cut you off. Like things are going on all the time. It's just I feel like I can navigate it easier than I used to. So that's what's different. You know how to drive basically. It's not like you're, oh yeah, because I feel this. Oh yeah, now I have no more money problems. Now I have best boy. Like it's not about that, but that's not what you need anyway. So the circumstances are not as important anymore, anyways, because you're at ease all the time. When this happens, okay, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm at ease with that. And this is happening, fine. I'm going to do this, and I'm at ease with that. So really, it's more about your ease than it is about getting perfect scenarios around. But in terms of respect or healthy relationships, absolutely that's not negotiable in my world anymore because it was not healthy for me. So I just don't participate in those.
I think it's fascinating that you're raising courageous kids. Like that you've come to this fairly recently, within the last number of years.
Yeah.
And yet your kids inherently, I mean, they set their boundaries, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it was so healthy before, there was transformation with them too, but I've made billions of mistakes, but I still, like I explained, it doesn't make me a bad person because I've made all those mistakes. It makes me a person who's learned. That's all it makes me. So I don't know that I've done a perfect job with the kids. I certainly have not, but I'm doing my best now to display whatever I can and they'll take on whatever they can. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely encouragement to everyone to express their own opinions, their own feelings. There's no dismissiveness between us at all in terms of, if somebody says something. So that's a big thing to do, there's a lot more respect. Yeah. In a way that I didn't understand. So it's, even if it's, yeah, I had to learn at a later age. Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about the micro, about going in and going deep, and I wanted to take this out to the macro.
Mm.
How has this work had a broader impact on your external world, and how might someone be able to use it to create a broader perspective of peace and compassion as they go out and live their lives in the world?
There's the expression that whatever happens on the inside happens on the outside, right? So almost every single interaction probably changes the world, whatever you do, this kind of interaction or that kind of interaction. So how does it impact? For me, it's constant. So when you set a boundary somewhere, you're giving messages that impact the other person. How it impacts, what they're going to do about it, that's something else. But it will definitely, have an impact on the person. When you're kind to someone, that's a huge impact. Or if you see them beyond, just their mistakes or their other things, or show compassion. I mean, every person you interact with is, it's a whole world as far as I see. So I'm sure it's impacting my world around me, whether it's in the circles or just in my general environment. And then I'm trying, starting with these podcasts, because I do see myself more than just, not just an author, more than an author, or that I wrote this book. Like I do see myself as some, I don't know, the word comes to mind is an activist, but I can't explain exactly how and what, to try to just raise, discuss these topics and to redefine a lot of the concepts that we're taught, which are just absolutely unhealthy for us individually and collectively as human beings. So I'm trying to do my part, whatever that is, your podcast included. And, where things go, who knows? Things go where they go.
Wonderful. And there's a quote in your book that I'd like to read back to you because I'm curious to get your take on it. Towards the end of the book, you say, when we sense everything and our heart is wide open, we can experience moments when our being feels so expanded that we can feel life beyond our individual self. We have merged without environment with the universe and are immersed in perfection in motion. You cannot choose to do this. I believe this is a natural state that can occur anytime to anyone when the time is right. I have had glimpses of this, and I know it's possible and true. And so, of course, my question is, worry, please. I would love to know what that was like. And
there's no words for, I mean, there were occasional glimpses, and other people get glimpses of this. I've heard, I have a friend who has had them. You can't make them happen or do them, whatever. But how to describe this? I guess it's like being so open, or so, seeing wide, I guess. It would happen to me often when I would walk outside and I'm, in nature, or seeing so wide that all of a sudden, how can I explain, like being in the movie as opposed to watching the movie, or molecules kind of, hologramic being together. I don't know if there's words to describe this feeling, but I was no longer feeling, can you describe those experiences? Yeah, I guess just no longer feeling a separate self. I guess in a way, like, how we talked about being a part of, like if you're in a relationship, right? And someone's doing something, you realize, hey, I'm part of this. I'm doing this too, right? It's not just they're doing this, right? You're sitting there. You're part of it in one way or another, right? So when you always see your part in something, so anywhere I go, I see my part, right? Yeah, I'm part. I'm not just like, oh no, that's happening. I'm in this. Like you feel like you're in this. So this is just a bigger feeling of realizing you're in it. You're part of the whole thing.
so being part of this universal experience, but really feeling that.
Yeah, but feeling it. Yeah, feeling it to the point where things are moving in a bit of a different, I don't want to say holographic, but a different speed. Yeah, a different speed. I've had glimpses, whatever that is. Who knows what it is.
It's a great quote, though. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
It made me pause and say, have I ever felt that way? So
people get little glimpses here and there sometimes in their life, but I don't know exactly what it is, like that level of dissolving, when you dissolve so much that you are able to feel a bigger picture of some kind.
Yeah, it's a sense that it's not just your little world, that there's something beyond, something bigger going on here.
Yeah, we are part of the bigger.
Yeah. What is it that I didn't ask about the Courage Circle that you'd like to share?
I'd like to share that I think you're doing a great job. Oh, that's not about the Courage Circle. Sorry. Well, I'm always happy to meet people that are encouraging other people, because it's a group effort, right? And so I'm happy to see people doing any work that, gets anyone getting in peace in themselves, because that for me is the solution, right? The solution is not to solve the wars, whatever, but to solve the disease or the war inside, and to live peacefully. And then you're going to go out in the world being a certain way. And that's where I think peace will come in our world. So that's what I would want to say. Great job.
So in some way, we're a glimpse of each other.
Of course.
There we
go. Exactly. Yeah.
There we go. Exactly. Wonderful. Well, Sandy, where can people find you? And once they find you, what will they find when they get there?
They can find me on the website, which is thecouragecircle.com. And there, if they want to join the circle, well, the in-person one, they have to come to Montreal, and you're welcome to join. And then there's an online one I started recently. So if somebody wants to join that too, or if they want information about the book or just to contact me, everything is just there on the website.
Great. And I will link that up in the show notes. I'll link up your website. And I thank you so much for joining me today and having this courageous conversation. I really do appreciate your time and the work that you're doing.
And I really appreciate your time and the work that you're doing, Kathy.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know there are many ways you can spend your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with me. Until our paths cross again, be kind to yourself and show your warrior spirit some love. If you know anyone who could benefit from today's episode, please pass it on. And many thanks for supporting the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It means a lot, and it helps others find their way to our circle. If you'd like to access the show notes, have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode, or would like a transcript of this episode, visit www.athenawellness.com/podcast. Until next time, be well.